Hello, everyone. How's it going? Azren, the language nerd here. I'm the owner of the Calgary Language Nerds. My team and I, we teach a wide variety of foreign languages to people of all ages and all levels of fluency. And welcome to this course here on how to learn another language. Now, this video here is part of the introduction of this course. This is introduction part 3. Now, one thing I should mention is if you are watching this on YouTube or on Instagram or somewhere that is not on the actual homepage of this of this course, the homepage of the course, if you're not watching it on the homepage of the course, you may be seeing this video and it's actually being uploaded out of order, meaning you've been following the series level 1.1, level 1 part 2, level 1 part 3. Now we're sort of going backwards in a sense. Well, that's because some of these videos in the course will get uploaded slightly out of order because I get feedback from someone or I realize a flaw in the course and I decide to add a video to a previous level or a previous section to where we hypothetically are, not hypothetically, but where I add something to a previous level um, compared to the order of videos I've been uploading on a social network. It sounds kind of confusing, but all of that to say that your best bet is to be using this course not through YouTube or places of that nature, but to simply go to the home page of this course, which is azrenthelanguagenerd.com/free course. That is spelled AZ or ZREN, thelanguagenerd.com/free course. So let's go to let's go to level 3 here of the level 3, excuse me, part 3 of the introduction of this course. This is something I've made reasonably recently, actually, based on a flaw or some, not a flaw, but I was thinking about the course and I realized that there's some missing information that should be mentioned. And I thought, okay, let's record this later, sort of after the fact, and add it in retroactively. So I've got, it's very short. I've got a few keys that need to be mentioned that I have not quite said yet. And they are the following. The first one, when you're going through this course, it is incredibly important for you to be inquisitive and curious. This is important. If you are not driven by curiosity when you're learning a language, you're going to learn a lot slower. You must be curious. You must want to know things like, how do I say that? How do I say that? How do I say this? How do I go about communicating this? What does that mean? You said something. I didn't understand what that meant. What did that mean? You should be asking questions left, right, and center. I talk to language learners frequently that just don't ask enough questions. They just don't. So you have to be inquisitive and curious. When native speakers are speaking and you're listening, pay very close attention as well. What sentence structures do you hear that you wouldn't be able to reproduce yourself? This is a big one. I see language learners all the time that say to me, "Oh, yeah, I understood what that meant. Oh, yeah, I watched that video and I understood." Or, "Oh, yeah, I read that thing and I understood most of the words. Yeah, yeah, I understood most of the words." But the problem is that you wouldn't be able to reproduce it whatsoever yourself. You wouldn't be able to actually say that yourself or write that yourself. You wouldn't know. Or another way to view it is you don't know why they said it that way. You understood the words, but you don't know why they said it the way they said it. I'll give you a personal example. I speak Gujarati. It's a language from India. I speak it pretty well, quite well, actually. Um, and I don't speak Hindi. Hindi and Gujarati are quite similar. So when I hear Hindi, I'll often understand a lot of the words. Or sometimes it'll go a step further and I'll actually understood what the person said. But I would never be able to actually say what they said because there's too much I don't know grammatically. There's too much I don't know as to why they phrased it that specific way. Sometimes I understood like 80% of the sentence. I think I understood 100%. But the moment I ask myself, could I just say what that person just said? And if the answer is no, then I don't actually know if I understood what they said. That's an important thing. If you are like, okay, I don't think I could just say basically what they said, even in my own words. I couldn't reword that to say exactly what they said. you might have missed something and you understood enough of what they said, but not 100% of what they said. So it's important to pay close attention to this. Usually, when you're paying close attention and there are things that they said that you would not be able to reproduce, or you would not know, you don't know why they said it the way they said it. You're like, why did they say it that way? Huh? And you don't really know. It indicates a knowledge gap, and often it's a grammatical gap, and it should be addressed. Meaning you should go figure out what is happening here. What's the knowledge gap? Okay. So having this kind of curious nature, whether it's listening closely for knowledge gaps, right? As I said, or even just asking lots of questions. I should probably put that on the page, ask lots of questions. Having that curious nature, it matters at every stage of the program. I don't care how advanced you are, how non-advanced you are. It's very important, but on the grammar side of things, right? Understand that it's most important from level 3 onwards. What that means is when you're below that level 3 point and you're kind of in level 1, level 2 of this program, everything you hear is new for you. And so you'll never be able to reproduce what the person says. Everything is new, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. Um, it's easy to get overwhelmed by trying to understand and dig into every single thing you don't know about. So at the level 1 and level 2 level, be curious, but also pick and choose your battles. Be curious, but pick and choose your battles. Meaning, be curious, have a curious nature, ask lots of questions. But sometimes you might say, ooh, I'm learning Japanese, and that person says, I should say that sentence like this. And when I asked why, the grammar seemed really hard. I really don't want to get into that. That sounds really complicated. Leave it aside. Kind of ties into the whole rules and grammar equals salt analogy that we've used, that I've said before in this course. So this is important. Now, this begs the question, how do you learn grammar? Or rather, how do you close that knowledge gap? What should you do? Well, let me tell you. Right, there we go. Well, you've got to learn grammar effectively. You have to learn, hang on, put this headphone over here. It's okay. You have to learn grammar effectively. Well, how do you learn grammar? How do you learn grammar effectively, one may ask? I've outlined a 6-step process. Well, 6 plus 1, let's call it. Step 1, this is my approach, by the way. Expose yourself to the grammar point organically. What does organically mean? Organically means that you did not go out of your way to try and learn it. You heard it and you kind of understood, but didn't fully understand it. You saw it when you're reading something. You tried to say something, but actually, no, probably more on the listening side, to be honest. You heard it and you're like, what's happening there? And you heard it probably multiple times. You'll notice in this course, especially in the earlier levels, there's a heavy there's a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a pretty big focus on input, meaning like listening, especially in the earlier levels, even later levels too, actually. There's a pretty big focus in this program on input, because I want you to get exposed to certain grammatical structure, certain words, things of that nature organically, meaning you hear it and you just heard someone say it and you're like, what does that mean? I think I get it. I'm not sure if I get it. Does that make sense? So first is you want to be exposed to it organically. I like to do this first because what that does, let me give you some personal examples. For me, when I have been exposed to a grammar point organically first, not even just, yeah, I guess grammar point. Yeah, like grammar point. When I have been exposed to a grammar point organically first, it makes it easier to actually learn and implement later. Here's an example. In French, I remember there's a grammar point called the subjunctive in French, and we don't really have anything that's quite similar to it in English, not really. And I remember hearing people use certain phrases that used the subjunctive. It incorporated that subjunctive. And I would hear people use it. And I would ask, what does that mean? And they would say, oh, that sentence means I have to do my homework. Il faut que je fasse mes devoirs. And I'd be like, okay, cool. Il faut que je fasse mes devoirs is I have to do my homework. Okay, cool. Sure. I don't really know what's happening there grammatically. There's something there I don't understand, but okay, no worries. Or I would hear things like, oh, il faut que je prenne blah, 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 blah. Fokugiai, all these things. I was like, oh, okay. Don't really know what's happening there grammatically, but I kind of get it. People could explain it to me. I can memorize these phrases. I sort of get it, but I don't really know what's going on. So that's an organic, being exposed to it organically. Step 2 is where you learn the theory. So let's go back to my French example. I had been hearing the subjunctive used in such a wide variety of circumstances for a long time. I even used certain phrases that had the subjunctive from time to time. I even used some of them just as phrases without realizing what the grammar was behind it. And then I remember I was taking a French class and our teacher started to teach us the subjunctive. And I was like, oh, il faut que je fasse. Oh, she's teaching us that thing? Oh, that's called the subjunctive? There's a grammar point behind that? Wait, what? What is this? Oh, and then she would start to explain the rules. And the rules, the theory of the grammar point was basically filling in gaps in the knowledge that I already had in my head. So the organic exposure had already given me somewhere between 25 to 35 or 25 to 50% of the knowledge. It was sort of in my head. I just didn't have it solidified. Learning the theory took me from that 35 or 50% all the way up to like an 80%. So I think that's a really good way to do it. I think a lot of people skip this and they don't do it organically. The first time they encounter something grammatically is someone introducing the theory to them, whether in a YouTube video, in a textbook, in a class. And I think that's a bit of a mistake. I think having a organic exposure to it first is beneficial. So one thing you'll notice when there's a transition from level 2 to 3. Yes, level 2 to 3. Where in 2 to 3, in level 3, there's a heavy focus on the past and the future. Versus prior to level 3, there isn't really a big focus on past and future. But my hope, to be honest with you, the way I've structured, I haven't actually even said that. I don't even say this in level 1 and 2. I kind of keep it to myself, but I'll expose it to you here. My hope in level 1 and 2 is that the way that it's structured, especially with the listening activities, the timestamp activities, the conversation things, right? My hope is that you end up getting some exposure to the past and future before you hit level 3 because of how I've structured it. And so even though you never formally study it prior to level 3, when you get to level 3, one of the first things in level 3 is this research stage where you go learn the theory of the past and the future. But my hope, and if you've done things properly, you will already have gotten a lot of organic exposure prior to level 3. Does that make sense? The same happens level 3 to 4. In level 4, there's more grammar that you dive into. But if you've been following this program properly, you will have already gotten a lot of organic exposure prior to going to learn the theory. So step 2 is to learn the theory. How do you learn the theory? YouTube videos, depending on the language, right? Every language is a bit different, but YouTube videos is probably good YouTube videos. There's probably blog posts. There's probably websites that talk about it. There are probably textbooks that break it down. There are probably teachers or tutors that can explain it to you. There are probably lots of resources that are simply a Google search or a YouTube search away. This program, I may or may not have mentioned this. This program is designed to work this program is designed to work best for languages that are widely spoken. Arabic, French, Spanish, Italian, German, English. Well, English is a funny one because I teach this whole thing in English. So if you're really a beginner in English, this probably isn't the most accessible to you actually, which is kind of interesting, but that's beside the point. This program works best for widely spoken languages, any endangered languages, any languages that don't have many speakers. Maybe there aren't any YouTube videos on it. There's nothing on Google for it. This program is probably not the most effective. Maybe that's an important thing for me to say here. It's not going to be as effective. So that's probably something worth noting because you need to learn the theory. If you need to learn the theory, but there are no YouTube videos on the grammatical theory of something, there are no textbooks, there are no tutors, there are very few native speakers, nobody understands the grammar. Well, unfortunately, there are things you can do, but that's not how I've designed this course, and that's a topic for another day. I've experienced that a little bit myself in Gujarati, but not to an extreme. Okay, anyway, so you learn the theory using the internet, using internet resources, or just asking a tutor or a teacher that knows their stuff grammatically. Next, you're going to complete some quizzes and worksheets. based on this grammar concept. I don't want you to spend too much time on quizzes and worksheets, but I want you to spend some time. I feel like most people overdo step 3, and they just spend way too much time on it. I think you should do a little bit, but not too much. You can find lots of quizzes and worksheets online, on Google, on YouTube, or simply ask a tutor or a teacher. They'll give you some. Use a textbook. Lots of places you can find quizzes and worksheets. Now, step 4, people don't do this. They usually leave it at step 3, which is not enough. Step 4, you got to create your own sentences. Write your own sentences. Write them. Lots of them. Lots and lots and lots that use this grammar point that you have now tried to learn. Write some sentences, get them corrected, make sure you're doing it properly. Step 5, you're going to keep paying attention to how native speakers use that grammar point in natural speech. So when you're watching videos, you're doing listening practice, you're doing conversation practice, pay attention. When you read things, pay attention to how native speakers use this grammatical point and look for examples. Pay close attention, because after step 4, you're still not going to, especially for complex grammar points, it's not going to be deeply ingrained in your mind yet. So step 5 is important. And step 6, make a special effort to use the grammar point when conversing and writing. Conversing as in talking to people, for example, in the speaking exercises of this course, there's lots of them, or in the writing exercises, or heck, in any other programs or such that you're using to learn whatever language you're trying to learn. If this doesn't work, because sometimes you're going to encounter grammar points that are so weird and so complex that even after doing these 6 steps, you're still not going to fully have it in your head. If that doesn't work, what I want you to do is I want you to memorize useful phrases that use the grammar point that you can use regularly and use them regularly. Continuously, slowly but surely add more phrases that use that grammar point and use them regularly. In your mind, when you memorize these phrases, keep trying to see the pattern. Keep trying. I'll give you an example. Mandarin has a grammar point called ba. Ba is something we don't have in English. It took me like 2 years to really get it. 2 years of not consistent study, but 2 years of paying attention to how native speakers used it, me making special efforts to try and use it when I could, and then trying to memorize some useful phrases that use that grammar point, just memorizing some and using those when I could. And as I slowly but surely added phrases to my bank of resources, right? As I did that slowly but surely, eventually, and paid attention to see if I can try and see the pattern, after a couple of years, it finally stuck. And now I can use ba almost as if it was English, right? I can use that grammatical point. Many language learners think, wow, 2 years? Yeah, 2 years. The big thing you can it's the hardest thing to do, but a lot of language learners struggle. A lot of language learners struggle to quantify time, and they think 2 years is a long time. And it is a long time, to be honest. It is a long time, but it's also not a long time. You're going to live to the age of 80 or 90 or 75 or 95. You're going to live a long time. 2 years is not that long. And you have to realize that it took you, when you were 5 years old, you spoke English fluently, but fluently for a 5-year-old. 5-year-olds don't really speak that well in their mother tongue. They really don't. There's so much they don't understand. There's so many mistakes they make grammatically when they speak and such. There's so much they don't know how to say. I think it's like 5 or 4-year-old boys only hear I think there's research on this where they only hear like the first 7 words out of your mouth or something, and then everything becomes to fuzz. Like it's something weird. So even after 5 years of full-time English study, you are not really that fluent in English. So 2 years of part-time study, right, is just not a long time. Does that make sense? So anyway, okay. And then of course, with these grammar concepts, use the analogy I've already talked about, which is the rules in grammar equals salt, right? Use that analogy when learning grammar. In fact, anything complex in a language. Now, read. You'll notice in this program, I don't place a heavy emphasis on reading in the initial levels. Level 1, 2, 3, don't put a heavy emphasis on reading. Level 4 and such does start to put a heavier emphasis, but prior to level 4, I don't really put too much of an emphasis on reading. Although, if we go over here, even though I do actually list it, I do list it here, in the traditional homework section, I do actually list it out over here, like reading and writing practice. I do list it, but I just don't talk about it that often in this program. But it's still a very effective learning activity. So what I'm going to say is for reading, this is my approach to it when learning a language. I usually say read what you can. Read what you can. And what you can read is going to be different at every stage of your language learning development. For example, here's a great example, Gujarati. Okay. I started to learn how to read in Gujarati as I'm recording this video today. It would have been roughly 3 years prior to me making this video. That's when I started to learn how to read. I spoke Gujarati before that. I just couldn't read whatsoever. So here we are 3 years later. Initially, what I would read is I would follow on Instagram like different meme pages, and I wouldn't even read the memes because that was too hard. I would look at the memes and I would read like 2 letters of the meme. The meme would have maybe 25 words, and I would read like 2 letters because it would take me 5 to 8 minutes to read 2 letters and remember what the 2 letters are. And that's all I would read. I'd be like, oh, I'd read for 8 minutes. And I'd be like, okay, I'm tired of reading. And I'd stop reading. And then, you know, 5 hours later, I'd be scrolling Instagram and then I'd see another meme. I was like, okay. I'd read like 1 letter and then I'd move on. And that's all I would do. I would read what I could. Eventually, those memes, for instance, I could start to read some short words. I was like, oh, I know that word. Oh, I know that word. Oh, I can read that word. Then I could actually read a couple words. Then I could read out the whole sentence. And now here we are. It's been 3 years. I haven't put a big emphasis on reading. I haven't been like really pushing it. I could have progressed way faster. But 3 years later, like now I can actually read probably, it's hard to say, but probably at the same speed as someone in grade school, like grade 3, 4, 5, something like that. I can read at that speed, maybe. That sounds about right, approximately. So I'm pretty proud of that. Like throw an article in front of me, I can read it out to you at a slow speed, but a consistent speed. And it doesn't feel daunting to have to read something anymore. Lots of words I don't know, but I can at least read it, and I can at least read it out loud and read the different script and everything. And so read what you can. Read whatever you can. Individual letters, short words, text messages between you and your tutor language partner, writing assignments you complete. That's a big one. When you do the writing assignments, read your own writing. That's a great way to do reading practice. Like read the corrected writing. You may want to look at graded readers. That's something you can choose to read as well. A graded reader is where someone has written a text or a story or a book, but they've written it in simplified language. I'll show you a graded reader in like 20 seconds. I'll show you what they look like. Once you reach level 4, reading becomes a higher priority, and that's where I start to put an extra emphasis on reading a little bit, because once you hit level 4, that's where you start to learn some more technical, academic, and professional uses of the language, right? Prior to level 4, level 1 to 3 is not really getting super technical or super academic or really professional or really technical grammar-wise. And I mean, there are some technical things, and there are some, like you'll talk about climate change in one of them, which is pretty cool. But so there are some things that are more deeper and such, but really level 4 is where it starts to ramp up in that sense. Because prior to level 4, if you look at how language levels are often graded and how they're scored and how they're, what kind of immigration requirements countries have and such, that level 4, level 5, really level 4 onward, that's where you start to get into the sorts of levels you would need for immigration purposes or for professional purposes if you wanted to get a job or in a company that used another language or things of that nature. You start to get to those level 4, 5, 6, kind of the latter levels. That would correspond to like a B2, B2 sort of level, if you know that scale, C1, C2, etc. And that's really where you get to those more advanced levels of the language, more advanced usages. So prior to level 4, I'm not saying don't read, but you'll notice in the program, I don't put a heavy emphasis on it. Now, I do want to show you some graded readers here. I want to show you in case you don't know what a graded reader is. Let me share my screen here. I'll show you a couple examples. I'll show you like some graded. So if you literally search like graded readers for French, for example. You can just Google it and you'll find lots and lots. You can buy them, right? I'll show you one that I like for Mandarin. There's a couple actually, but if we look at like HSK, I forget the website name, but if I search HSK reading, here it is. So this is the website. They've got different reading practices based on your level. So HSK 1 is like the lowest level. So we click on this. We click on this one, for example. Like this is a very short, simple text to read. Now, if you don't speak Mandarin, this might look complicated to you, but I'm telling you it's reasonably easy. It's not too bad if you're learning Mandarin. So this is an example of something that's it's a reading practice, but it's been simplified to your level, right? And you can obviously purchase books and stuff like that too. There's lots and lots of resources on the internet, but you may want to look at something that's where they've specifically tailored the difficulty of what you're reading to your level. So there's graded readers such as that. Let me share my screen again. That's something you may read. That's obviously a great option. And lastly here we have be introspective. Okay. In every video up until level 4, I believe it is, you actually partway through level actually I can't remember. In many of the videos, I don't actually mention this, but you have to do this. Okay. As I said, I'm recording this video after I've already posted and recorded a whole bunch of videos in the course. So I didn't mention this, but it is very important. At the end of each unit, a unit being like, if we just look at this one, this is like level 3, right? We have these units. Each unit page starts with this green page where there's like a topic listed. So that's like one unit. At the end of each unit, you need to do the following. Number 1, list 1 or 2 grammar points you learned. Write a short paragraph explaining each one and provide at least 4 example sentences that incorporate each of those grammar points. That's important. That's going to be a nice review activity for you. You're going to list out all the new words and phrases you learned. Highlight 5 to 10 that you want to make an extra effort to remember. That's important. Okay, that's very important too. It's a nice review activity. List out any concepts you skipped or didn't fully understand that you'll revisit later. Remember, every 8 to 12 weeks, you're going to do this revisit and review step. If you do this and you write these concepts out, it'll be easier at the end to see what concepts you skipped and what you have to go back and still learn. So for example, myself, in my Mandarin, my overall Mandarin level is roughly at a level 4, between a level 4 and a level 5. That's kind of roughly where my level is. But I've skipped a lot of things. There's a lot of things I didn't do in level 3 that I still have some gaps in my knowledge that I'm quite aware that I have to go and actually fill those gaps. I'm quite aware that I'm not there yet and I have to go do that. So if you have those written down and tracked, it's really easy to find them later. You're also going to list 2 other things that you learned that are really standing out. What did you learn that's standing out? Think about that. Think, right? Learning a language, you got to be in the driver's seat of learning a language, not in the passenger seat. So many people are in the passenger seat. They're not the ones engaged in their learning. Think, like, what's really standing out? Use that brain. And then most importantly, ask yourself, do I feel ready to move on to the next unit? This is a big one. A lot of language learners, they don't do this. Like, they take classes and such, and they just keep moving forward, but they're not really ready to move forward. They don't feel ready to move forward. So if you're not ready to move to the next unit, don't move on yet. Redo some of the activities in the previous unit. Relook at your notes, rewrite some things, do some more practice, take a couple more classes, like watch some more videos, like move forward when you feel ready to move forward. Don't just move forward for the sake of moving forward. What a silly thing to do. Very silly thing to do. At some point, if you find yourself like, what's that expression we have in English? Don't beat a dead horse. Is that what we say? Don't beat a dead horse. I think that's what we say. What I'm trying to say is at some point or another, you might find, okay, you might think to yourself, I have spent such a long time on level 2, part 2. Like I feel stuck on this now. It might be time for you to move on, just move forward to level 2, part 3 and say, okay, I'm not getting any further by just reviewing my notes and reviewing and redoing things over and over. Okay, it's time I move forward. That might happen, but right upon completing a unit, like ask yourself, do I feel ready to move forward? Ask yourself that question. And if the answer is no, you don't have to move forward. And I believe that's everything I wanted to, there was one more thing I wanted to say. Oh yes, I remember. It's on my screen share. Um, Last thing I wanted to say, and then we'll wrap this video up, is the following. I think, how do I say this? There are many ways to learn a language, lots of methods that work. Many, 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 many. And my goal for this course is to create a program that you can follow step by step by step by step by step. And my goal was to create a step by step program that will work for a significant number of people that truly can take you from a pure beginner all the way up to a very, very advanced level, because that's a gap in the marketplace now. There's not a lot of programs that really can make that promise and deliver on it. But understand that I highly encourage you to personalize this program, because there might be certain things that I tell you to do that don't work super well with how you learn, or there might be certain programs you currently are using and you're adding this program to your current language learning regime, your current language learning methods and strategy and approach. And that's totally cool. So that's really important to realize. There's many ways to learn a language. This is just one of many that I've put together. I think it's a very good method. I think it'll work, especially as I keep improving upon it based on feedback and such. But I do want to make sure that's clear that I don't think this is the only way to learn a language. There's many ways to learn, lots of things that you may choose to forego in this course and maybe don't work as well for you, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think this, I really think that this method, this course that I'm putting together will work for the vast majority of people. I really think it'll help a lot of people. So, okay, let's wrap this up here. I appreciate your attention as always. If I told you what time it was while I was recording this, you'd be like, Azren, go to sleep. But I got so excited. I was like, you know what? I've got to make this video now before I hit the, what do we say? Hit the hay? Is that expression in English? Before I go to sleep, I really wanted to get this done. And so I get to sleep in tomorrow as well. So I'm not worried. You can probably see my eyes might look kind of tired to you. It's kind of redness to them. I feel a bit tired. So it's time to sleep. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.